Right, thank you for attending tonight. Going to make a start. We're a couple of minutes late. The fact that the clock's gone missing makes it a bit difficult, but start. So I'd like to welcome everyone present to this meeting at the Civic Centre and those who are observing the meeting on Microsoft Teams. Fire alarm procedure, there are no fire drills expected this evening, so in the event of the alarm sounding, please quickly make your way out of the building. There are 3 exits from this room, which members can use to vacate premises. Please switch mobile phones onto silent or switch them off, and if you do have to take a call, take it outside the meeting room. Do not leave any possessions unaccompanied and/or report any unaccompanied possessions. Remember to take any possessions with you when the meeting is concluded or as you leave the meeting. This meeting may be subject to filming or audio recording by others in accordance with the Council's filming protocol. Anyone who remains in the meeting following this announcement will have deemed to have consented to allow their image to be recorded and broadcast unless previously agreed with the Council. I'll move on with the agenda. Apologies for absence.
Chair, we have apologies from councillors Abbs, Bell, Hammersley and Metcalfe. Councillor Callaghan will substitute for Councillor Abbs. Councillor Ellis will substitute for Councillor Bell. Councillor Coxhead will substitute for Councillor Hammersley. And Councillor Hartshaw will substitute for Councillor Metcalfe.
Thank you. Are there any other apologies? Item 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. The second item on the agenda, which is the batching plant, Crown Farm Way, Forest Town, is within my ward. I shall be speaking on that proposal, and therefore I shall abstain from the vote on that proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Hartshorn. Any other declarations of interest? No? Thank you. Move on to item 3, minutes of the last meeting. Have them. Can I have a vote of show of hands to accept them for the members who were there? Do I have a seconder for them minutes? Sorry, Councillor Moxon, yeah. Any against? No. Thank you. Move on to item 4, which is planning application reference 2024-0590, reserved matters application relating to the appearance, landscaping, layout and scale 372 dwellings with associated infrastructure, including internal access roads, drainage and areas of public open space, following the outline planning permission reference 2018-0522 out. Phase 2, land at Pennymint Farm, Abbott Road, Mansfield. I invite the host to make the report, please.
Chair. An application following outline consent issued in June 2024 at Pennymint Farm. Before I start, I have a few updates. Firstly, in terms of the front page of the report, you'll see that the ward is identified as Sherwood. That is a error on our part. In fact, it is, of course, Plesley. Another comment that we've been asked to pick up on is the consultation responses, environmental health comments, I've referred to November 2025 being received. Obviously, of course, that was November 2024. By way of an update, the report was drafted as the final reconsultation period was expiring. I can confirm that we've not received any further third-party comments. We have 3 updated plans, a section drawing received on the 3rd of April, street scene drawing received on the 3rd of April, and what's a proposed render street scene, which is basically a digital of what a section of the development might look like. There is a further condition to be inserted at condition 18. If I read this out in full. Prior to commencement of development, a landscaping scheme detailing the proposed landscaping design and planting schedule to the individual plots, together with amenity planting, including trees within the built development areas, shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. Details shall include a timetable for the implementation of the landscaping for approval by the local planning authority. Reason, in the interest of the visual amenities of the development and to accord with adopted Mansfield District Local Plan 213 to 233, policies P1, P2 and NE1. On further adjustment, page 18, paragraph 2, where I've referred to the main public open space being on the southern side of Pennant Lane. In fact, it's on the northern side. Apologies for that. And one final point of clarification. Plesley Community Residents Group also raised comments in respect of flooding, loss of the hedgerow on Abbott Road, loss of highway trees, landscaping around the balancing pond, and concerns regarding protected species. Flooding and protected species issues were considered as part of the outline application. Existing landscaping is an enforcement matter. The loss of highway trees will be covered by highway technical approval, and the repositioning of the hedge is considered necessary due to highway requirements. Officers have to consider the proposal that's before them. Turning now to the application itself. Pennant Farm, this is an aerial view of the site outlined in red. You'll see the phase 1 development to the front of Abbott Road is sitting clearly marked, where Water Lane, the northern boundary. You can see an extended red line which straddles Water Lane, which is the SUDS open pond scheme, and then it extends round, follows the boundary of the Mall, extends down past Pennant Lane and out toward what will be the employment land, which was approved last year, extending then between the Mall and Abbott Road. The application is for 372 dwellings. It includes the internal access road, drainage, public open space. Over the entire site, this will bring a total of 602 dwellings to Pennant Farm that will complete the development of residential phases. Road which has secured outline consent is via Abbott Road. It will link through to Avalon Road, which is the existing spine road to the development. That's already in place, but it terminates at the end of the phase 1 development currently. That will extend on. Development is served from the new access to Abbott Road. It crosses Pennant Lane, which is a restricted byway. Further footpath crosses the site from Water Lane. That's in place, and the footpath signage is already there. It will need an element of diversion, but it will extend to the boundary with the Mall, and then it will allow the crossing of the Mall as a current. Development includes open space, 2 play areas, and retains part of the treed areas by the Mall, connecting to and connects to a sustainable drainage scheme. An area of planted buffer is shown to the Marr boundary, a replacement hedgerow along Abbott Road, behind a new footway and cycleway. Those extend, for those members who aren't regularly on committee, that is an extended new cycleway that will extend along Abbott Road on the side which currently isn't pavemented at all. In doing so, it removes the existing field hedge. That will be replaced behind the footway cycleway and continue along the employment land. So we have a continuous run of hedgerow. There's a small element that can't physically be achieved, but it will run through. So that will be not very different to what you see currently, the application just set further back into the site. The internal road layout is to adoptable road standard with a limited number of shared driveways. Externally, the highway works were secured at outline stage, and they include a signalised junction to Abbott Road, signalised junction to Water Lane. Under another planning permission, the employment land at Toucan Crossing is installed at the top end of Water Lane and the Marr. That's secured through another planning permission now, through the employment land, which is next door to this site. Previously, the intention had been to route buses through the site, but this has been agreed now not to take place. And as you'll see from the report, there was an update that was due to be given in respect of discussions between the applicant and Nottinghamshire County Highways in relation to 2 extra bus stops that they wanted to be provided on Abbott Road. We haven't received an update at this point in time from the discussion. The applicant are not happy to put 2 further bus stops in. It does mean that there is a slight overrun. There's an overrun in terms of the normal walking distances to bus stops. We do have bus stop which is relocated as well on Abbott Road. We don't feel that particular point is sufficient to delay the application, so we will be asking you to determine the application on the basis that 2 additional bus stops that are requested by the County Council aren't included within this scheme. Turning to the application, it seeks reserved matters for the appearance, layout, scale and landscaping of the site. The outline consent secured affordable housing, 6% of the first 250 houses, that's on this scheme, and then 10% for the remainder. So that's remaining 122 houses. So that's 6% of 250 and 10% of 122. Of those, 60% are affordable rent, 40% shared ownership. There was a master plan at the outline consent stage. Now that was an indicative master plan, and we're aware that third parties have commented on a difference between the master plan as submitted now with this application and the original. The original was indicative only. There was an expectation that it would be replaced by a master plan specific to the application that would come forward at reserve matters, which is what we have. Significant differences there are the removal of a green wedge along the Abbott Road frontage, which is now reduced, which is now a planting strip with a hedgerow. The main public open space was intended to be on the southern side of Penniman Farm, with this green wedge sort of linking through to it. Now that's altered in that we now have public open space on the northern side of Penniman Lane and a smaller area to the south within the site, strip along Abbott Road, and then a little small, as you can see from the drawing, in the bottom right hand corner of green, which is a landscaping area. What is retained though is a buffer along the edge of the Mar, which is an extensive planting strip, and the SUD schemes which were in place at the outline at the last Reserve Matters application. So those are the significant changes. The layout has evolved over time, so the layout isn't substantially different, and we have a smaller number of houses than were originally thought to come. Were coming forward under the outline. That was 400. We're now down to 372. That's as a consequence of negotiations with the applicants to improve design quality, get a better mix. The scheme is a mix of 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroomed houses. The emphasis is on 3 bedroomed, with 2 bedrooms following behind that. We have a limited number of 1 bedroomed houses. We have flats which are only or designed as 2 flats per building. So what we don't have is an apartment block on this scheme. What we do have is a small number of what look like larger dwellings, which are 1 flat on the ground floor, 1 flat on the first floor. That allows a better integration, in my view, in the scheme. So we don't suddenly have a large bulky building sitting within what is a series of semi-detached terraces and detached properties. Parking on the site is above standard. The 828 spaces are required in terms of parking standards. 866 have been provided. Now, some of that is by slightly over providing on some properties. We have three houses which are detached houses, which they're garages with integral garages, which don't quite meet the standards. So as a consequence, the developers have added an extra parking space on the frontage. So those properties, in theory, have 4 parking spaces, garages which are obviously not quite of a size to meet county standard. The scheme also includes a significant amount of visitor parking, and one of the emphasis from the county highways was to ensure that there will be available visitor bays, but also visitor parking spaces in front of houses. As you'll see from the layout plan, we do have some rows of extended parking areas. We've negotiated a lot of those down, but we do have some areas where there is rows of frontage, lengths of frontage parking, which we then split up with soft landscaping and trees which will be inserted. What we have tried to achieve, though, is roads where you don't get that on both sides of the road, so it means that there is visitor parking available. In terms of the street scenes and the section drawings, I think we can. There is a slope. The slope at the Mar is higher than Abbott Road. Non-even slope, so there's grading down, and then we also have a change in levels between the site and the employment land to the south. These drawings show you how this will work in practice. The house is a 2-story, 2.5-story, and as you can see, we have some sloping across the site. We have some sloping by Pennament Lane. Pennament Lane will stay at the same level. Public open space is on the side of the site where the levels are closer to Pennament Lane. Pennament Lane effectively sits in its own little cutting. In terms of air quality, that's considered to be acceptable and has been subject of report. There is a noise issue with parts of the site, and noise reporting has put forward a scheme for some acoustic fencing along the Mar, along parts of the Mar, and some acoustic fencing to go around gardens at the Abbott Road end, the traffic noise from there. as an integral part of the scheme, the Abbott Road will be reduced to 30 miles an hour speed limits. In terms of the house design, we have a mix of render, half render, brick, all under pitched roofs. The render is going to be a 2-colour, so we won't have just one flat white colour through it. That will be discussed in more detail at post-decision stage, but the colour that I'm advised Persimmon using, which works very well on others, they're saying it works very well on other sites, is a grey colour. We would determine that in a bit more detail. Grey covers a large range. We want to be certain around that, and obviously the bricks. Houses have got some detailing to them. We've got banding on the front of houses. I think if we can pull up some of the house types. We have some with integral garages, front gable projections, and a reasonable mix. Little detailing like exposed rafter feet, and I think those are examples of the house types as opposed to running you through the whole portfolio package. In terms of the SUD scheme, and I know that there has been a lot of local concern around the SUDs. What you're looking at there is the corner of one SUD scheme. There has been discussion, or we have been advised in the past, and concerns expressed about water levels rising in the SUD scheme. It's a scheme that runs on what's called infiltration. So as the water comes in, it will then percolate down through the bottom of the scheme, through the bottom of the basin, out into subground level. In the event that overflowed, then it connects through to the main sewers. The expectation, and we had an updated report a couple of months ago on this, that SUD scheme's been looked at and it is working to appropriately. There's a third SUDS basin which will serve the new development. So we have 3 SUDS basins which straddle along the side of Water Lane. Third is yet to be connected. Obviously that will serve the new development. In relation to other matters, landscaping, the site is obviously agricultural fields. There are hedgerows on it. There are a limited number of trees. The hedgerows largely, other than on the site boundaries, are largely removed. We have one section that's kept within one of the areas of public open space. But otherwise, the intention and the scheme is to replace the landscaping with landscaping which is not only has a biodiversity value, but also is appropriate for what is a large-scale housing development. So that involves enhancing along the edge of the Mar, an indigenous hedge along the Abbott Road. Pennant Lane hedges will be largely retained, and we have a very detailed scheme that embodies within it biodiversity enhancement. So the intention is to create environments which as far as possible can encourage the existing wildlife to stay within the site. The scheme is one that we feel is supportable. It meets the requirements of the outline consent, and it will enable the Pennant Farm then to be completed should you support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report, Karen. We've got speakers on this item. So first of all, I'd like to invite minutes, Andrew. If you let me know when you're ready, start it off. You just turn the mic on. Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Good evening, Chair, members, officers. A couple of points of order from the perhaps from the officer's statement with regard, certainly in terms of the footpath on Water Lane. That's currently closed. It's been closed for a long time. There is no footpath off Water Lane. And the scheme is in total 600 and something houses. You may want to consider that when you look considering the affordable housing percentage. As members are aware, flood risk is a massive concern for all residents, as are increased traffic volumes, air quality resulting from all developments. The SUD scheme in itself, which I accept, was approved in the original application. Flooding in the area has definitely got worse since phase one of the development was completed. We've had constructive meetings with Persimmon, and we're grateful to them for addressing some of the concerns to obtain the best outcome for residents. That said, some of our concerns have not been addressed, and we hope members will take these into account in deciding this application. Flooding is a massive concern, as are air quality and traffic volumes. Detailed technical reports attached to this application show no cause for concern in respect to flooding. The facts would tend to disagree with this. It should be noted that flooding has become more prevalent since phase one of this development was completed. Balancing ponds of the development, two drain into, as I understand, two into the sewerage network. The third, as we've just been told, is not yet attached and uses a filtration system. We stand at the third pond will service this phase of the application. The topology in this area is quite unique and recognised as such in various reports, most notably from the British Geographical Survey. The area is underpinned by Permian and magnesium limestones. These rocks are historically used as building materials because of their strength and durability. The Executive Mayor led a multifunction team back in 2023-24 to look at the flooding issues. One of the outcomes from that survey, from the work the Mayor did, was that this site has subsequently been cultivated to stop the runoff from the site, affecting the flooding. Unfortunately, it's rained very little since they did that, so we don't know if that's worked. But clearly, this site has been identified as a cause of flooding. Our second concern is air quality. Members will be aware monitoring in Plesley was removed during COVID. It was reinstated in February 24. The data that we've just got from February 24 shows that the air quality in Plesley itself is about 10% below government targets. This is virtually unchanged for when the data was last reported in 2019. In the past 5 years, there's been a general decline in air quality levels. The mean concentration across the UK is 14 micrograms per metre cube. Plesley is almost 40. The national reduction is attributed to measures aimed at reducing emissions. 2023 alone saw a reduction in 9%,
30 seconds
in urban populations and 7% in roadside levels. Nothing's changed in Plesley in the last 5 years. Final issues around landscaping. The condition attached to landscaping is on completion. Some of the landscaping leaves a lot to be desired. We've asked the developer to address that. There are still dead trees in phase one of the landscaping that haven't been replaced. The ponds are at the entrance to this site.
Time.
Thank you for your presentation, Andrew. Do members have any questions of the speaker? So can you indicate? Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Mr. Miles. In the report, under the objections part, it talks about Plesley Community Residents Group and one. Where is the status of conditions attached to the outline consent and 106 legal agreement? Don't think you got a chance to mention that, but the part about the 106 agreement, what issues are there with that?
I think they're being
And then you mentioned, sorry, Chair, you mentioned, as I quite remember rightly, that overall there'd be 600 houses. So in terms of the affordable housing, how many should we have?
To the officer. The original plan was for 600 houses. The first affordable house home should have kicked in after the 252nd home was built. There was only 202 in phase one, so there was no affordable housing. So the figures quoted only, whilst they only refer to phase two, the original scheme of 602 or whatever it was would have had more affordable housing than this scheme's got.
Members have any further questions? Councillor Answer.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I say, Mr Mills, are you saying that because it's been built in 2 sections, 3 sections, 4 sections, however many you want to talk about, are you saying because it's been done the way it is, they've got away with not doing so many social housing?
Our percentage targets attached to social housing. The first part of the development had a target which had the development gone through in all in one go, then the first target would have kicked in after the 252nd home. Because they only built 202, they effectively started again, and target still does kick in after the 252nd home. Because it's in 2 phases, you get a reduced number of houses, and it's not in line with what the government target for social housing.
Councillor Hartshorn.
Well, as you know, the monitoring was reinstated on Plesley Hill in February last year. It was taken down during COVID. The figures that we're reporting that we've collected and caveat that by saying it is raw data, it's not published data. So there will be some changes to the raw data that I've seen, but it's hovering around the high 30s, which is exactly the same level it was in 2019. The rest of the country's seen a significant drop in NO2 in particular in that last 5 years. As we go to more electric cars, we stop using fossil fuels to generate our power, various other things. The mean NO2 levels for the whole country are 14 micrograms per meter cubed. The readings on Plesley Hill are high 30s. So there was a statement made earlier on that air quality levels are acceptable. So what we're effectively saying that air quality levels at almost three times the national mean are acceptable. Well, are they? Should we not be trying to reduce? It's not just, I know we're here to talk about this particular development, but there are many other developments in the area that are going to make it worse. With the report out of Environmental Health says, yes, they are acceptable.
Councillor Ellis.
I just wanted to say that I understood that Mansfield District Council actually collected the air quality data on behalf of DEFRA, and DEFRA are quite happy with the results that have come back from Plesley. It's not something the council are doing or worried about.
So was that a question or a statement?
It was a statement that.
But aren't you supposed to be asking me questions, not making statements?
Well, I'm sort of saying to you, do you agree that DEFRA, that we're collecting on behalf of DEFRA, and that they find that these figures are quite acceptable?
How do you define acceptable?
DEFRA have agreed them and say they're, you know, they're fine.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we're just collecting, Mansfield
but
District are just collecting.
Definitely agreed the integrity of the data. That's unquestionable. But that doesn't mean to say that the outcome of the data has to be acceptable. All DEFRA is saying is that we agree that the data you've collected is accurate and you're collecting it in the right way. They're not making comment that it shouldn't be less, are they? They're just saying it doesn't exceed government limits. Government limit is 40. We've got the highest recorded NO2 levels in Mansfield District on Plesley Hill. It's been an area of concern since 2007, and they've not changed in the last 5 years. So if they're an area of concern and they're accepted as an area of concern within the air quality report that we published, that the council publish, yeah, they've not changed in 5 years. Is that deemed to be acceptable?
You're saying the traffic has actually increased.
The traffic
Well,
has
you're
increased.
supposed to only ask
The
questions.
traffic,
Sorry.
the traffic absolutely
Have
has
a
increased.
debate with the speaker. Do councillors have any further questions? Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
Or it was collected by the landmark up until 2019. It hasn't been collected at the landmark. There's an automatic monitoring station further up the hill that's been in place since 2019. It was the collection point, or the monitoring point was reinstated at the landmark centre back in 2024. So we've got no data between 2019 and 2024. The council refused to issue the data. We only got that data through a freedom of information request and then an appeal to the Information Commissioner's office. It is raw data. It will change once it goes to DEFRA and is published, but it won't materially change. It's going to be in the high 30s. But there's no data between 2019 from the Landmark Centre and 2024.
Do members have any further questions, Mr. Miles? No? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Miles. I'd like to invite Councillor Hartshorn to the podium. Sharon, you've got 6 minutes to speak, and you won't be having any questions. You can stay there if you want. Well, I assumed you'd got a microphone. Can't see.
Thank you. So what I'd like to say is it will be quite a success really to see this development go ahead. I'll regularly visit the Avalon site, which if you can see next door, and I speak to residents there, and I haven't come across any residents yet that aren't happy about where they live and the location that they live in. I've placed a lot of how I feel about developments on talking to the residents around there, and it is a beautiful area, and the layout that they've got on the already existing Avalon site, it's quite a beautiful place to live. So I'm eager to see that this next development is going to be as impressive as that one, with it being such a nice surrounding area to live in. I do have concerns about the pollution levels. I've spoken to the officers several times about it, and unlike Mr. Miles, I was actually quite satisfied with the results I'd been given. But again, I'm no expert in that field. I'm, doing the best I can to understand this as it is. One thing I did look at, and that did concern me, was that on the site itself for the developers, there was 80% of the reviews on there that said they were satisfied and more than satisfied with the housing developments or the homes that they'd bought. But there was then 20%, approximately 20%, I think it was just over, that said they were not satisfied about the homes that they'd purchased. Reading through just four of the reviews, it did say, and this is just the first four reviews, that there were flooded gardens, waterlogged gardens, and water pooling in gardens. And those three comments came from the first four reviews. So of course, being the councillor down there, that rang a bell with me straight away, because we are dealing with flooding issues in that area. So that did ring a bell for me, and I thought that might need to be a consideration, and we need some assurances that what mitigations are put in place are adequate for that area. That was my main concern, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hartsell. Got one more speaker. I invite Robbie Steele. Get ready, Robbie. If you put your microphone on, you've got 4 minutes.
Oh, hello, good evening, everyone. I'm here representing Persimmon Homes, seeking reserved matters approval for our new homes at Penniman. Firstly, I want to thank the council officers and the Highways Authority, who we've worked with from pre-application stage to really improve the development. We work with a lot of councils across the region, and Mansfield are honestly one of the best to work with. So here at Persimmon Homes, we invest significantly in our build quality and customer care, and we secured for the 4th consecutive year our 5-star rating with the HBF. And this is only awarded to house builders where over 90% of customers would recommend them to family and friends. So we pride ourselves on our community work through our community champion scheme, and in 2023 we donated £734,000 to charities and community groups across the UK. And this includes recent donations to teams within Mansfield. Our Nottingham office is based on Ransomwood Business Park, so we have a vested interest in supporting Mansfield meeting its needs towards 2030. In terms of the application, we've engaged both the local community and met with the Community Action Group prior to submission. And through positive engagement with the council, a reduction from the 400 homes permitted outline stage has been agreed, and this is to deliver a better quality scheme. The development includes a mix of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bed detached, semi-detached and terraced houses designed to cater for a variety of needs and budgets. This includes smaller starter homes for couples and single people, right through to larger family homes and some 1-bed affordable maisonettes. Persimmon takes great pride in affordable market housing and offers a range of incentives like key workers and armed force discounts designed to help people get on the housing ladder. As the office has stated, it includes 27 new affordable homes, and these are a mix of affordable rent and shared ownership. So the scheme itself has gone through a design review process with the urban designer and the Highways Authority at pre-application stage, and it achieves a real high quality design. Got lots of open space, including the landscape buffers, a village green, tree-lined streets and 2 children's play areas. I mean, I personally have got children myself, so I know the importance of having a good play area on site. So a key improvement we made from the outline was the retention of the wooded area where Penniman Lane sits. That's where the farm buildings were since been demolished, and according to our ecologist, it's grown into sort of semi-mature woodland. So we made the decision to keep that where it is, and there's going to be a play area there as well. So the green infrastructure includes species-rich grasslands, woodland planting and sustainable ponds. We've got bird boxes, bat boxes, insect hotels and hedgehog highways. The council's ecologist and wildlife trust both support the scheme. So after discussions with the action group, we have submitted plans to improve landscaping on the frontage with Water Lane, and we take the point on board about the replanting of the trees, and we'll happily meet with them, and any that's died will get replaced in the next planting season. We have got a robust drainage strategy. I think we've had 3 consultants look at this, and we've had monitoring on the ponds to ensure they're fit for capacity. The housing is highly sustainable using Persimmon's latest range of energy efficient homes. They've all got solar panels and electric vehicle charging points. We've provided parking numbers in excess of the standard requirements. And they touched on it earlier in section 106 contributions of around 2.4 million will be provided. And that includes money towards schools and healthcare. So finally, we operate in the biggest housing crisis facing our generation, and this development would secure 372 new high quality homes on an allocated site. And we've addressed all relevant consultee comments. So we respectfully request that the committee grants approval for the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members have any questions, Mr. Steele? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just check the children's play area, the wooded area off what is now Pennant Lane? Pennant Lane's a restricted byway. Is that going to remain as a restricted footpath stroke byway? It won't allow I'll spit that out in a minute, vehicular access.
There's no changes to that. They're not going to allow vehicles up.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Answer.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, with the report from the Ward Council regarding some of the gardens being wet, but 80% satisfied, obviously the flooding is a concern. Flooding, you know, with the SUDS calculation that was worked on in 2021, can developers say beyond doubt that they will not flood?
I think we can. So we've, if you the flooding report, we've had 3 different consultants look at it over the time. We've had a telemetry equipment. I hope I've said that right. Basically, monitoring equipment on the pond to check the levels of the water over an extended period of time, and they were happy with that. The drainage plans, we have submitted some, and they have been modelled, and they're happy with it, with the drainage system. So I think we can say with good assurances that there won't be a flooding issue.
Councillor Answer.
Then when Persimmon leave the site, who will be responsible for the SUDS maintenance and care?
Yeah, that'll be a management company. It's in the section 106. So it'll be a management company, and the details of that will have to be agreed with the authority. So details of that management company.
But who's going to pay for that?
It'll be a surcharge for the residents.
Thank you. Where water will be will it drain off from the new development into the third SUD, or will it be another SUDs built?
The SUDs that are there now are capable of accommodating the whole entire development.
And finally, obviously, there's a right of way which was mentioned by the officers, public right of way on site. I assume you're going to divert that, put that back in.
Correct. So I don't know. You can't really see on here. So on the northern section, if you zoom in, scroll up a bit. Yeah. So there's that pathway through there with sort of green links. So they've got trees lining along it, and that links into where the footpaths are. So obviously with them the steps, and they're a bit overgrown at the minute. So we're going to sort them steps out, and that footpath's going to link there into the A617.
Thank you. And finally, concern about obviously when you start to do your development, when you built the first part, you use an access and a depot kind of thing up Abbott Road behind the development. That was where you developed, all your deliveries came into. Where are your deliveries going to go into? What we're concerned about is the use of Abbott Road into the estate, because that's it's not a suitable road for every vehicles. And so I'm wondering, how are you going to access the site?
So there's a condition on the outline consent which requires a construction management plan. and lorry routing to be agreed. Now, I believe the wording of the condition as it currently states to say that all construction traffic should come off Abbott Road, actually. But we're hoping to
Never mind.
So basically, we've got to agree details of that construction traffic routing with the council and the highways authority through that condition.
Have any further questions, Councillor Moxham?
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned, sorry, you did mention earlier about you'd been working with Notts County Council Highways, and the planners mentioned earlier about the Persimmons are yet to agree to the 2 new bus stops that were Notts Highways are requesting. Why are you not agreeing to that?
So as part of the outline approval, we're giving them £65,000 towards upgrades or 2 new bus stops. So the time for them to ask for the bus stops was then, and they've asked for them, and we're paying a contribution. And what they do with that contribution, if they want to put in 2 new bus stops, they can use that money to do it.
Any further questions? Councillor Hartsell?
Thank you. Can you just say that again for me, please?
Yeah, so at outline stage, there was a contribution secured. I think it was about £65,000 through the 106
Okay.
for upgrades or new bus stops within the area, I believe. So, but then they've asked for more at this stage, and this is a reserve matters application. So what we're considering here is the layout, appearance, landscaping, and scale. We're not can't through this application then do a new 106 and provide for them. It's not that type of application.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Tempest Mitchell?
Based upon the
Yeah, that's material consideration. Yeah.
say that there should be 10% affordable housing.
Not anymore. They actually took that out at the last upgrade. So the issue with the affordable, so the outline consent has already been granted, and that was, I believe, subject to a viability review, and the amount of affordable housing was agreed at that stage. So that's a total of 27 dwellings for this development. So that's already been sort of agreed through that outline permission. We're here just in terms of our reserve matters application to look at the appearance, landscaping, and scale of the development. It's not to discuss obviously the affordable housing, which has already been agreed, and we've provided the numbers in accordance with the signed agreement.
Any further questions? Councillor Tempest Mitchell?
So, going back to the bus, is now in effect not going through the estate to the spine road, but going down Abbott Road. Presumably in the original outline application, as I've just mentioned, you have to stick to bus when the estate did it.
Yeah, there was no specific conditions requiring that. Now, what we have done is we've provided 3 new pedestrian links onto Abbott Road that you'll see on the south section of the site. We've also agreed to formalise one of the linkages on phase 1 where there's a cut through from a hedge to provide accessibility of residents who want to use the bus service. I think the issue is timetabling issues of the operators running along Abbott Road being one of the main routes into Mansfield. So that was why we we've chosen to enhance connectivity to the existing bus stops.
The Tempest Mitchell.
Does that connectivity comply with the 400 metres max walk from any one house to a bus stop?
So all the plots are within a 400-metre radius if you draw a line around them. And then it's in terms of walking distance, it's how long it takes to actually walk to the bus stops. And I believe that some will fall outside of that, but all are within the 400-metre radius.
Any further questions? No. Thank you, committee. Thank you, Mr. Sale. Right. Back to invite questions to the officer. Would any members like to ask questions of the officer? Moxham.
Yeah, thank you. It's just to go back to the question I asked about the bus stops. I'm a little bit confused now because obviously the applicant's saying that that's not part of this application, so that's already been agreed previously. So I'm a bit confused as to why it's even been brought up as an issue. If you could just clarify for me, that'd be great.
Yes, the bus stop contributions were established through the outline consent, which is the appropriate one for that to be done. There were bus stop improvements and bus stops that were specifically referenced. The expectation, and I would say it wasn't embedded in the outline consent, but the expectation was that the buses would route through the estate. In fact, the Spine Road was designed to be able to do that. What's then happened since the Reserve Matters has been submitted is that the County Council have agreed that that's not what they want to see now. So, but effectively the goalposts have changed slightly in the interim. They then fed back was, well, it's not going through the estate, in which case we would like to see more bus stops on Abbott Road. So they've changed the position slightly since the outline consent. The reason I raised it was because in the report I did say that I'd update in terms of the discussions between Persimmon and County Council. County Council haven't fed back any more consultation responses to me about it, so it felt appropriate to at least flag it up to you.
Anyone else with questions? Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
I think Robbie's probably answered this question, but I just overall on this two estates on 600 houses, nowhere near 60 affordable homes. 7. 10%, 32, 27. Just clarify why.
This dates back to the outline up to the position where they'd built up. Phase 1 had been built out, so around 200 houses, 202 houses, which was below the trigger point for the affordable housing to come forward. The outline consent then effectively ran out of time, so excuse me. So at that point, it wasn't possible to submit any more reserved matters, which has meant, for those of you who were at previous planning committee and the Bellway situation on Lyndhurst, meant a replacement outline application had to come forward. Now, in submitting that outline application, that was submitted by the landowners, not by the developers. They put forward a case to argue viability. Planning committee at the time of determining the outline application agreed a lesser amount of affordable housing with that scheme. It went through the planning committee. It was a committee decision to accept a lower provision on this site. As you'll see, we've got this slightly odd situation where we've got a 6% and a 10% figure. That was considered the acceptable position at the time of the second outline consent. Reserve matters is submitted under the second outline consent, so this is why it's a lower figure, but I'm afraid that was a committee decision to accept that position.
Members Mitchell.
This one.
The section 106 has the figures in, so and the figures in the report I've set out to how this works. So what was submitted to planning committee at the time of the replacement outline was taking into account that the first phase development hadn't reached its trigger point for the affordable housing.
On this development, because we're only doing this development, is there a trigger point? They need to build so many houses so that they make that contribution, or if might not happen, let's just say they decided they were only going to build 150 houses, not 172. They still have to make the contributions, and would they still have to stick to 10%? 10% of what they build.
Yes. Apologies. Do you have the section 106 available? Because that will set the trigger point. The way the section 106 works in terms of the numbers coming forward, it's 6% of the first 250 new houses to be built, and then 10% of the remaining 122. So that adds up to the total figure to come forward on under this reserve matters, or under the outline of what was established as the maximum quantum of development for the site.
It's important to remember that the 106 will control the delivery of the affordable housing. The reserve matters application just really needs to show provision for the required number of affordable houses, which is 27. That's what needs to be considered tonight, and that is actually shown on the layout, because that is the requirement for the overall site.
Any other questions? No one's indicated. Thank you. Could I seek a proposer this item? Yes.
It's an opportunity to have any comments.
Yeah, once you proposed it and seconded it. Councillor Stevenson and Councillor Coxhead. Now in debate. Motion, yeah. We're now in debate mode. Anyone want to make a comment? Councillor Answer.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sure when Persimmon built their first 200 houses, they would have gone through all the necessary requirements regarding water, and boundaries and everything, and assurances. I'm sure they did. And yet we still get a report even tonight that some of those houses' gardens are flooded. I can't have any faith in building another 400 houses on that site that the assurance has been given will be guaranteed. It hasn't worked on the 200, so I don't see it working on the 400.
Any further comments? Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to say welcome the next phase of the development in light of the housing crisis and the need for Britain to get building again. It'll be pleasing to see it go ahead, especially the fact that they've looked at reducing the number to increase the design quality, and as well as noted. Sorry. It noted that there's a number of eco mitigations in place for solar panels and car chargers mentioned in the report. However, it's clear that there's flooding issues. I know the report is deemed those as satisfactory, and so it's difficult to argue against the people who are deemed to know what they're talking about. However, first-hand reports, as mentioned in reviews of the developments with waterlogged gardens, you can't say more than the people who have to live there as to what those issues are. So although can't really oppose the application based upon the report saying that it's accurate, that the flooding mitigations are satisfactory, I would urge the developer to look again in regards to those flooded gardens and ensure that it's not going to become a wider issue should the development go ahead. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to comment? Councillor Hartshorn.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I obviously would like to go back to the flooding issues. And again, it's to urge the developers to closely look at what they're doing and to make sure that there is mitigation in there. And as in the reviews that I've read, when there has been pooling and flooding of gardens, some assurances that they are going to attend to that with some urgency. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to comment? Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
Thanks, Chair. I agree that we need houses, don't we? And we clearly need affordable houses. Our concerns is affordable housing, particularly first homes. That's by the by because it's already been decided in the outline plan. In terms of the flooding, clearly Plesley is it's got a road called Water Lane. Tells me there might be a lot of water there. Earlier somebody mentioned the Lyndhurst estate. I've stood in a dozen back gardens, still flooded now, with water coming up through the even through garage floors, basically. Simon have said that what they're going to do with the suds is put them in the hands of management company, presumably run by somebody like Meadfleet or whoever, will then be responsible for the landscaping and suds. If the suds fail, most of that goes to the householders. And at the moment, there is no legislation whatsoever to protect freeholders on such leases to management companies. Hopefully there will be in the next 2 years or so. Isn't. It could mean that we didn't get a figure of what the management fee would be, but let's just say it's 150 quid, is it, Lyndhurst. It could go up to £1,000 if the suds are not sufficient. And I have to say, I still have concerns with the policehold issues on every estate with the communal gardens, etc. Flooding part really does worry me on this estate in Plesley, where we clearly have lots of water. That's an issue that Persimmon have to think about as to whether they're going to management company put residents in charge of the management company. Intelligent people that can those types of businesses without getting fleeced by management company, by a lease.
Anyone else wishing to comment? No. I'll move to the vote then, please, by show of hands. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show. All those against? Abstentions? Thank you. Motion's carried. So planning application reference 2024-0590 RES reserve matters application relating to the appearance, landscaping, layout and scale of 372 dwellings with associated infrastructure, including internal access roads, drainage and areas of public open space, following outline planning permission reference 2018-0522 out, phase 2, land at Pennymint Farm, Abbott Road, Mansfield, has been granted permission with conditions. Thank you. Councillor Answer, you said you'd like to leave, so thank you. Just reconfirm that that's with the extra landscaping condition. Thank you. Right, I'll move on to agenda item 5, which is planning application reference 2024-0679 full construction of a self-service batching plant with cement silo and auger pan, mixer, aggregate bins, discharge conveyor, control payment console, washout water recycling bin and associated equipment incorporated within the plant, Mansfield Brick, Crown Farm Way, Forest Town, Mansfield. Do I invite the officers to make the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. So there's, before I just get into the main body of the presentation, there's some small number of updates. So just we've had a late item raised from a member of the public who raised objections and it covered the following issues. So it said questioned the validity of the noise report and it was stating figures were out of date and done by an architect. Operations at the site have increased since the report was written. Tree belt is deciduous and therefore noise increases. The noise makes it difficult to sleep and work from home. Operation should be restricted on Sunday and bank holidays at midnight to 7 AM. And then it says request taller perimeter fencing with vibration absorbing material in the middle. And then it just says request sound monitoring in gardens. And also there's a further update to the planning history of the report. So planning application 2020/0156/FUL was the erection of an industrial unit on plot 6 Mansfield Brick, and that was granted in March 2021. So that's it for updates. So I'll kind of just go through sort of sequentially through the site context and then go through the main considerations, responses received and the details of the development. So sorry, my throat's blocking now. So the site is located on the Crown Farm Way industrial estate. So it's one of the largest site allocations for employment in the local plan. That's controlled by policy E3. So this relates to plot 6 Mansfield Brick, which is located approximately in the centre of the site and is bounded by Crown Farm Way to the south east and then Newland Road to the northwest. So the background to this particular proposal, so it was granted planning permission for I think it's concrete. Yes, it's included the batching plant, aggregate storage bins, and cement silos and brick manufacturing. So that was granted in 2007. Building commenced on the site in 2009-10. So we're looking approximately 15 years since the construction of it. There's been further development on the site since, which is outlined in the planning history. There was variation of condition 2019, further industrial development in 2020. So the current proposal seeks to erect a self-service batching plant, cement silo auger, pan mixer, aggregate bins, and a new discharge conveyor and associated development on the lower ground adjacent to the site entrance. So the site is currently already covered in hard standing and is used for the external storage of blocks. So there is already manufacturing of similar products, but there's effectively a need to manufacture or have the capacity to manufacture smaller amounts of product. So we're talking between 250 kilograms and 3 metric tons of concrete mortar and screens mix. So it's understood that most local concrete batching plants will only have a minimum of 1 cubic meter or meters cube of concrete, which is to do with cost. So the proposed hours of operation would be less than the deliveries to the site, which is controlled by existing planning conditions. So the proposal would operate 7 days a week, but it would be restricted, as is recommended, to between 7 in the morning and 5 o'clock in the evening. So if I just go through sort of some of the key responses that have been received. So the objections primarily concern themselves around noise. So I'll just highlight what the summary of those concerns were before sort of proceeding to technical comments and sort of what the main material planning considerations are. So if I just list off what was in the report. So there were 6 representations received, notwithstanding the additional one that I just highlighted at the beginning. So it says proposed operating hours and noise from the site at weekends in particular adversely impact residents' amenities. The factory is currently receiving vehicles before 5 a.m. Contrary to the restrictions on the site. I should note that's an enforcement matter, so it's sort of beyond the scope of the application. But then it says the site does not meet its existing noise limiting obligations, and it says brackets condition 10 in a contravention of the existing conditions. Not clear what evidence has been submitted to back that up. And then it says the business is currently under investigation for statutory noise nuisance. A scheme for noise monitoring should be introduced. And then it says proposed batching plant should be located elsewhere in the site. Impact on property values, not material consideration. Impact on ecology is not considered to be problematic because it's already on existing hard standing. And then impact of external lighting should be noted on that comment that there isn't any proposed external lighting as part of this particular scheme. So just to briefly go over, so as I said, the principle of the development was considered as acceptable. The type of development we're talking B2 general industrial use, so that would accord with the overarching spatial strategy and principle in the policy E1 to E3. So if I just pick up the relevant technical consultation responses. So I'm not going to go over each one in equal detail because there was, I think, noise and to a lesser extent highways are sort of the main issues that have been considered in the officer report. So if I just highlight what the latest response from environmental health was and then just outline what has been submitted alongside the conditions, it says there was a significant number of complaints received in 2019, primarily related to the bang of tailgates on tipper lorries delivering aggregate. And then it says, however, Mansfield Brick implemented measures to prevent the issue from recurring. Since then, we have only received 1 complaint in 2023, which did not result in any action. It is worth noting that some complaints made directly to Mansfield Brick rather than through the council. The company retains a log of all complaints and action taken, which is reviewed in the annual inspection from Mansfield Brick. And it does say there is an active investigation ongoing, and it says, however, the noise complaint in question may relate to a different unit within the site and may not relate to the to the Mansfield Brick at all. And then it says additionally, we have not received any complaints regarding deliveries occurring outside permitted hours. It says whilst general noise monitoring has been conducted across the estate, no specific monitoring has been taken place for Mansfield Brick and no action has been taken. The applicant has provided a noise, so that one of the concerns was the details of the noise assessment submitted related to the individual proposal, but there has been, to the front of the noise management plan has an addendum to it that's been provided. So it's looked at properties and sensitive receptors along Newlands Road, Langar Road and Keyworth Drive. So I think the general assessment of noise effectively is we've not received any technical consultee objection to it, and the estimated noise levels would but on the receptors that have been tested would fall between 30 and 35 decibels, which is projected to be within normal range. This would be consistent with the comments we've received and also the complaints that the proposal would be approximately 140 meters from the closest residential dwelling, with approximately 60 meters of landscape buffering in between. The comment about deciduous trees increasing noises, I'm not a technical expert, but generally speaking, landscape is considered to attenuate noise rather than facilitate it. So there are conditions relating to the operation hours of the development. There are and during the construction of the development as well. So the noise issue has been thoroughly considered in the report. We consider it to be acceptable. Just on highways, so there's, I guess there is an issue of the development as a whole, making sure it doesn't have a cumulative impact on the wider highway network. The Highway Authority has noted that there would be about approximately 20 vehicle movements per day on the network, which would equate to approximately 10 on each of the neighbouring junctions. This was considered to be negligible on the overall cumulative impact. The access wasn't considered to be optimal, but given the location and it being significantly away from any residential development and largely being internal to the existing access road, while it's not optimal, there wasn't a highway safety issue that was raised and the actual risk was deemed to be minimal. So highways was considered to be acceptable. Those are really the main sort of primary considerations. Matters to do with ecology, flood risk were deemed to be acceptable. The site is it's in flood zone 1, so there's no known issues of flooding on the site, and it's already covered in hard standing, so there will be no material impact on flood risk. Again, same with ecology, because we're not talking about any impact on existing habitat and biodiversity. Net gain was exempt from the development. So for the reasons I've kind of set out, I can answer any follow-up questions. It was considered that the proposal is consistent with the Mansfield District Council's local plan and guidance in the National Planning Policy Framework. And the recommendation before the committee is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions outlined. Thank you.
Thank you for your report, Dan. I've got speakers on this application. So I'd like to ask Ms. Chilvers to speak. We've agreed that she can stay off camera so you can speak from where you are over there. Thank you. When you're ready, just turn the mic on and you've got 4 minutes.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. On behalf of myself and local residents, I'm raising concerns regarding ongoing noise and vibration sounds from the Brickworks facility and the additional exacerbating impact of the proposed batching plant on what is already considered by us to be an unreasonable level of noise when compared to the surroundings, with the increased vehicle and equipment noise that will come. On a government website, noise nuisance is acknowledged as not just loud noise, and refers to it as a possible combination of more than one factor, such as exposure, number of occurrences in a time period, the duration and time of day. That is what we are experiencing, along with intermittent loud noises. It's like having a continued nagging ache that grinds you down. I wear earplugs to bed and can't have my window open in the summer, etc. We have this late night, all day and early in the morning, except weekends currently. But that will change if this goes ahead without proper consideration of mitigating factors, as realistically this is probably a done deal. My neighbour didn't object, for example, and I quote, tried to stop it being built altogether years ago. Concerns about it just fell on deaf ears. Council just see more money, just tired of it, but good luck. I'll sign any petition, but not getting involved, end quote. Also, I believe notices were sent to limited residents and other reasons. The current noise management plan has been written by architects, not acousticians, and this is being considered by non-acousticians. Is that really acceptable for a complex subject? The plan doesn't actually set out realistic ways of managing actual noise issues other than being a means of fobbing us off with complaints and maintenance logs. The content cherry picks information from the 2007 acoustic report, which doesn't even mention the reversing white noise decibel levels, and just twists them as a positive alternative to the reversing beeps, when apparently they can emit between 85 and 102 decibels at source, depending on the model and application. And where does it mention the fact that apparently a Ford Transit van engine, typical of a jobbing builder, can produce around 70 to 80 decibels? In addition, the fence is limited in length just to the northwest corner, and properties to the east of Langer Place, those on parts of Newlands and those on Poplar and Lime, won't be protected by it, although I'd question its effectiveness anyway. But yet, an attenuation factor is used in the report. The management report doesn't even consider Poplar and Lime, yet due to the topography and valley effect, plus the height of the conveyor belt, see decibel levels in the 2007 report, they are impacted too. Have you ever been in a valley and heard noise from below? Also, the site layout suggests it's more extensive than it is. See Google aerial view. Plus, the trees are mostly deciduous, so they don't provide thick coverage for half the year. The 2019 application and committee report referred to the local development increasing sound noise levels, reducing impact of the brickworks, but still extremely quiet, especially at night when the brickworks isn't operating at the weekends. I request that brickworks and private properties have sound monitoring equipment installed so that frequencies and noises can be matched. I expect the squawking of the reversing vibrations, vehicle noises, regular bangs, and the noise in the evenings and early mornings to be significantly different from the surroundings and cause the conclusion of lack of quiet enjoyment by residents and impact of their reasonable amenity, so as to be not in line with planning policy P7. Please also read Ian
30 seconds.
Dickinson's email dated 14th June 2019 at 16:33, which seems to have been left out but suggests noise levels were excessive following readings taken by MDC. I would like restrictions placed on Sundays too, so we have a reprieve as a minimum. And construction measures are considered, such as vibration absorbing foundations, road surfaces that absorb vibrations, etc. Has anyone considered increased silica dust that causes lung cancer and the light impact on bats?
Thank you, Ms Childers. Do members have any questions of the speaker? Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
Thank you for that. That was excellent.
Thank you.
Just one thing about then talking about an email to some noise measurements.
Yeah, it was in the I think it was in the 2019 variation of condition application. Ian Dickinson, and it's 14th of June 2019 at 16:33.
June 2019.
At 16. But there's an email. They've used old information and gradually got diluted. Time's moved on. Things get left out. Very quick.
Basis of scripts there, and the email is that the noise was too.
They'd done, I believe, from that. I've had limited time to review all this. I've had to go through planning it within kind of a day or so because I'm extremely busy. So I've had a lot of technical stuff to put together and spawn it. But I got the impression from his email, which was only a few lines, it done some that the limits are on the edge, and he was saying that the report seems to be coming out a bit low in that, and the report that is referred to, the 2007 one, got attenuation factors in that come out with the figures that they quote. But the decibel ratings that they're using, like I say, it doesn't actually include the white noise ones, and the white noise decibel levels are higher than, actually potentially higher than some of the other decibel levels. And we hear the white noise ones a lot because they're the reversing noise, and they've always got vehicles reversing round, zooming round, and we constantly hear this noise. You know, and you hear it late into the night and early in the morning. When I first moved into my house, I was having work done, and I slept in my conservatory, and because I was having it rewired, and for insurance purposes, I stayed in the house, and I could just hear constant, like 5 o'clock in the morning, I was getting woken by the noise from the brickwork. Hear it, and I don't have my window open in my bedroom. Can hit so when it's really hot in the summer.
Any further questions? Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
Well, we can hear vehicle movements. I don't know whether it's vehicles within the facility that are carrying out movements within the facility, whether it's vehicles coming in anyway, because they have operations within the facility. So even outside of hours of vehicle movements, because they're moving things around. So I'm not there, so I don't know whether it's deliveries coming in or vehicles moving things around, like blocks around the facility. Because when they're putting sand into things, you know, that's not deliveries, so they can still have vehicle movements. But in a way, when the deliveries are made, it doesn't matter, because they can still have vehicle movements late into the night, you know, because there's vehicles within the facility. And it made me laugh that they put restrictions on the, well, I think I'm probably right anyway. I work in construction. I work on construction. I do site visit, and it is like being on the. And it will be good. That is key. And I support the job. In the way of that, and taking a lot from this. I haven't wanted to object because I don't want to have to ever declare that I've objected if I sell my house. But now I'm in a position where I'd have to declare that because I'm an honest person, and I would not saying, well, you didn't know whether you objected. I'm aware of the position I've put myself in that by doing this, but done this knowing the position I put myself in, because I feel strongly about it. And that's why I'm trying to look at the realistic options, proposing Agroscience Foundation, looking at better, and it is limited, and the layout drawing, they show the site boundary, like there's a blue or a red line around it, and then it says perimeter acoustic fence. The wording acoustic fence is along the middle, and it makes it look as though potentially the acoustic fence is more extensive than it is. But if you look on the aerial view, it's in the northwest corner. It's not to the full extent of the site, and it's 3 meters, but the site goes lower at the point where it's 3 meters. So the net effect of the height of it is not. And then the conveyor belts as well, the height of the conveyor belts are really tall. People on lime and poplar, I think they get the noise from conveyor belts. Like I say, the sort of valley effect. Years ago, I was working in Monaco for a few weeks, and I was just outside on the border in an apartment. And
the question's been answered. You're only supposed to answer a question. I've allowed you to tell us quite a lot there. But do other members have any other questions? No? Thank you. Thanks very much. I'll invite the second speaker, which is Councillor Jackson, to do it from there.
Am I okay to stay here?
You are.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You've got 6 minutes.
Thank you. I don't think I'll take 6 minutes, but I think that the residents made the point very eloquently. I think the representations I've had from residents are not that they object per se to this development. They appreciate the economic importance of the development, but what they are concerned about is the impact on what is already an existing noise issue. The noise and vibration is affecting residents sometimes 24/7, as has already been explained by Ms Chilvers, and they are worried that this new plan will exacerbate those conditions. I think it's important to remember that there has already been some creep within this construction. They're not sticking to their hours, according to residents. The car parking isn't as was originally planned. Now, appreciating that that was the existing development, there's always the worry that that will happen with a new development. So there is no assurance for residents that the developers will stick to the noise mitigation plans that have been put in place. One of the residents is significantly concerned that the noise mitigation plans are just not good enough. That's already been alluded to, and another resident has said the same to me. We feel that the noise abatement plans haven't been assessed properly and professionally, and that's with no disrespect to planners, but it's already been mentioned, specialists don't appear to have made a decision on this. It's the architects, and they're not specialists on noise abatement. So I think really what I'm trying to say is it's not NIMBYism, and that's a term that one of the residents used. We're happy for the development to proceed, but there needs to be some assurance for residents that noise abatement will be looked at, monitored and managed, and that the constructors will stick to the conditions and plans that are put in place. It does feel that the 7 a.m. to 5 a.m. delivery is arbitrary and not really relevant. And also the acoustic fencing appears to be a bit of a nod and not really a solution. So what I would urge committee to do is consider whether these conditions are acceptable, whether there's enough monitoring and enforcement, and should this development be approved, then it might be appropriate for the council to consider some noise monitoring going forward. I am aware that there is a noise complaint being investigated. We're not absolutely clear if it is this plant, but it would appear that it does involve this plant. So there is an issue there, and it will get worse. And while we're happy for the development to go ahead, there needs to be some mitigation put in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. All right, could I invite members to ask questions of the officer? Councillor Stevenson.
Chair, Councillor Jackson's already formed most of my questioning. It is a form of a statement, so I'll try not to go over it too much again. But in light of what the residents have said, and in particular the fact that the company itself is under investigation of a statutory noise complaint, a note in the report it's mentioned that it was suggested that residents a scheme for noise monitoring could, or was mentioned by residents, should be introduced for the wider site before any further planning approvals were granted. Noted that's not something that's being considered, but would it not be possible as part of the conditions to have noise monitoring on this new development, and therefore if there was any breaches, it'd be something that we could be aware of as and when it happens, rather than having to wait for complaints to go forward?
Thank you, Councillor. Obviously, I don't want to take away from any of the concerns that have been raised here. I think we're, as officers, we're trying to assess the development as a whole, as proposed, as much as the wider site. Obviously, whether members want to consider additional conditions, I think that's a matter for the committee to consider as part of the debate of the proposal. I think what I would, I guess, say is when when we're sort of assessing the development, we're looking at the consultation responses received and we're basing it upon the evidence before us. And I think part of the difficulty with assessing a scheme like this is we've got a larger site that's much bigger than what's being proposed at the moment. This is effectively a small ancillary unit within the existing site. And what we've tried to do in the conditions is massively tie this down much more than what the existing development currently is. And I think as much as noise, as much as we can try to assess noise, ultimately we're assessing whether the proposal is an acceptable use of land, and we're trying to control that by conditions. Environmental health do have their own separate noise monitoring and noise complaints process, and I think the actual as there was a noise complaint ongoing, so I don't want to prejudice the outcome of that. But I guess the macro picture, we've had one noise complaint to the council which wasn't upheld in 5 years. So again, I think ultimately we're looking at an ancillary development. I really don't want to dismiss noise concerns for the wider site outright, but I guess we can, or I'm looking at as the evidence for this particular development. And again, that is not to take away from the experiences that have been dealt with. And we're looking at a scheme which is 140 meters from the nearest residential receptor, and the nature and scale of that wasn't considered by any consultees to be unacceptable. So I hope that answers your question. Thanks.
Members have any further questions? Councillor Moxon?
Yeah, just on that last bit, if I'm not mistaken from going through it though, you've just said that that there's only been one complaint in the last 5 years, was it 4 years? Right. Yeah. So my question is about, unless I'm mistaken, that this is going to increase A, working hours, and B, the amount of work that's done on site as a whole. Is that correct?
So there's kind of two parts to that. So there's, as far as working overall, the beginning of the report suggests that in enforcement complaints that there wasn't any restrictions on the wider site, but with this application there will be restrictions on the operating hours of the particular development within the red line to 7 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, 7 days a week. But that's restricted, whereas the wider site isn't. So we're looking at the restrictions we're placing on the development proposed. As regards to cumulative impact of noise is something that again has also been assessed, and the conclusion based on the evidence that's been submitted is that this proposal would be ancillary to the wider site, and the impact wouldn't be sufficient to warrant refusal under policy P7. But again, that I'm not trying to take away from the concerns that have been raised, just that the evidence this particular application doesn't indicate to us as officers that the proposal would be unacceptable when assessed on that basis. Again, environmental health does have their own noise mitigation and investigation process, but we're just looking at the land use.
Doesn't matter. The committee members will assess what has been said and decide what to do, but you're not allowed to speak. If you want to keep speaking, you'll have to leave the room. Sorry. Councillor Moxon.
Sorry, can I just come back to that previous answer? Unless I'm having a really bad day, which is entirely possible at the moment, I'm not sure you answered my question at all.
Can you just stop a minute? You've just gone on camera, which you said you didn't want to be. So I think that was rather stupid. Yeah. Councillor Moxon, carry on.
Thank you. Yeah, so my question was, are the working hours at the site increasing, and therefore are is the amount of work and being increased on site because of the working hours increasing, and secondly because they're increasing the capacity at the site? So that was my question. I thought.
Thank you, Ken. So I might have misinterpreted. When you say working hours, are you talking about the 24-hour scope, or are you talking about the cumulative working hours at any one time? So cumulative. So I get the development would, by necessity, attract additional. As I say, the estimated vehicle movements by highways was 20 vehicles per day. That was, on a highway safety perspective, was considered to be acceptable. As far as yes, there would be more activity during the hours of operation, and there would be deliveries, which is controlled by condition to match the deliveries on the wider site. But the actual 24-hour scope would be limited from 7 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon. And as a cumulative perspective, it was considered by environmental health, by the evidence that we've received through the noise assessment, and on a balance of policy, that the cumulative impact of the overall scheme wasn't unacceptable, cumulatively speaking. Again, that's not trying to ignore the wider site issues, just looking at this development. And again, if it's committee to consider whether they agree with our recommendation as officers, or whether they want to consider additional conditions. But I don't want to say too much more on that. I hope that answers it.
Claire's going to just clarify that point.
So I think just to try and put it into a little bit of context here, we've got an existing use of the brick factory, which my understanding is that it's not restricted in terms of working hours by condition, but it can operate 24/7. We've then got a subsequent application that's come in, which is a much smaller part of the site, and is seen or has been presented as an ancillary use, a self-service batching plant, which is obviously an element of this site. So I think there is an intensification of the site. There has to be, because obviously you're adding more development to the existing site. So then the process we go through is that we look at the evidence before us and then consult with our environmental health colleagues. Environmental health, as you've seen, have no objection to the scheme, and they're our main consultee in this regard. We have, in this instance, decided to control the proposal, the self-service batching plant, in terms of hours. So that wouldn't be able to operate 24/7. It's got a restriction on hours on it to try and assist the noise issue. In terms of noise per se, my understanding of this site is that there was a variation of condition application in 2019. I think it was much more restricted. The condition was in terms of it used decibels in the condition, actually saying what amount of noise could be generated from the site. And it was decided that that condition should be removed, and that it appears that it moved towards a more collaborative approach with environmental health by way of an environmental management plan. And the environmental management plan now in effect controls the noise generation from that site in conjunction with environmental health. So I think there's a slight overlap here in terms of how much does planning control it, how much does environmental health control it via their statutory noise legislation. The evidence that we do have in front of us, as Dan has said, in terms of the environmental health advisors, we've only had one complaint since that time, but the actual complaints to the company itself, because they've got their own complaints procedure, they have put in the evidence in 7. I can't say if that's correct or not, but that's the evidence that's been put to us. And we've had obviously seven objections to the planning application. So the question really is, does this ancillary development tip it over the edge in terms of noise to actually refuse the application in terms of noise, or is it seen as ancillary, and is it the main brickworks that is causing this problem? And I think that's a really difficult question to answer, but like I say, we can only go on be guided by our colleagues from environmental health who have no objection and are satisfied with the environmental noise report. I hope that just clarifies where we are in terms of.
Members have any further questions, Officer? Councillor Ellis?
On here, just one clarification. It's the installation of a self-service batching plant, and it is for local community and builders who will be able to purchase and collect small amounts of product, and that's between 7 in the morning 5 in the evening, 7 days a week. Does Sunday trading actually come into this? That's my question.
Obviously, planning perspective can only they've proposed hours, and we've assessed the hours proposed. If there are Sunday trading restrictions, they would generally be a separate planning, like consenting, because you have no planning, building regulations, licensing. It would be a separate. But I guess there are restrictions on deliveries on Sundays, but the actual operation, again, we're assessing the use as against the what they've proposed. If there were Sunday restrictions through Sunday trading, then that would be controlled by a separate legislative regime.
Tempest Mitchell.
Chair, my question was kind of on similar grounds. You said in your clarification, Claire, who then enforce their word law?
So my understanding of it again is that the environmental noise report controls how the complaints are submitted, and it sets out things like that when a complaint comes in, they will the company will investigate it. I don't know word for word, but they will investigate it. They will set up noise monitoring, and that's done in conjunction with environmental health. I think it's a really good question because obviously, like I say, there's an overlap. I would lean towards environmental health. I don't know if Paul can add anything else to that, but I would have thought that environmental health would have more statutory powers than planning, because we'd be enforcing against a document really, and as long as that document is carried out, then that's probably as far as we would go in terms of planning. I just feel that like the environmental health legislation is probably stronger in this circumstance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Claire's absolutely right. If there are ever any noise conditions on a permission, they're always very technical, the decibels and readings, and that's because that comes from environmental health. They haven't recommended any condition like that in this instance. So any complaints about noise nuisance would be a matter for environmental health under statutory nuisance.
Thank you, Paul. Any other questions, Councillor Hartshorn?
Thank you. So, please forgive my ignorance. It's my first planning committee tonight. What I'm hearing are that residents are living with continuous noise that's interfering with their everyday life. And I'm also hearing that we have an employment site here that needs to be in operation. With the additional new site, there would be additional vehicles of additional noise. And what assurances can we have that everything will be done to keep the residents safe from that noise? Thank you.
And thank you, Councillor. I think, like I said before, obviously we assess the development as has been submitted and the land use that comes with that, and we consult with our obviously as many technical colleagues as we can, and the conditions that are attached to this decision are enforceable directly in terms of working hours, directly in terms of the details that have been supplied, but also by environmental health as an adjacent team within the council. So again, like, I think that it's an iterative process. It's not just about it's not just about one instance of this permission. It's an ongoing, when the permission's granted, it's an ongoing process to try and control the noise based on those conditions. And again, me and Claire have acknowledged, and no one's trying to hide that there would be additional operations during the hours of operation. But I think there's an effort to tighten this up compared to the existing use, which from what we've said seems to be unrestricted. But looking at this development in particular, recommended as many conditions as we reasonably can to control that. And I think the balance and the evidence before us is that this development as a whole would not lead to an unacceptable cumulative impact. And I think the challenge that we have as just officers and everyone on this committee is that disaggregating noise from different units is not an easy thing to do. And again, I completely feel for everyone that's affected by this, but we're assessing the development as a whole, and then it would be up to enforcement following the decision to take action on that if there were further complaints received by the local planning authority and the environmental health. That doesn't rule out any other complaints that have been received from other teams.
Any further questions? No? Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Could I have a proposer seconder for the recommendation to the report? Proposed, Councillor Stevenson, seconder. Cox said. In debate mode, does anyone want to make a comment? Councillor Stevenson.
I think from the answers we've had in regards to concerns with noise, I think it is valid that it's going to be up to environmental health to enforce any noise complaints. And so, although I think you're all sitting here taking those on board and perhaps not in full agreement with what's going on at the site currently, I can't really see a reason to go against the recommendation based upon needs to be done in terms of enforcement. So to support everything on board, and yeah, it's a disappointing one that there's a number of noise complaints going on there, but hopefully they'll get resolved and something can be done about them. And I'd urge all the residents who've heard that there's only been one complaint made to AEHO to go forward and make complaints in regards to noise when you think things aren't being done correctly. So it is all logged, and so when we come to an application like this again, we can look at it and go, there's been, you know, a number of complaints rather than just the one. So yeah, thank you.
Anyone else wishing to make a comment? Councillor Moxon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I live quite close to them. It's gone off the screen now, so I can't point out exactly where I live. But I am further away than what's been mentioned so far. I can hear the other side of the industrial set. Oh, there we are. We're back on screen. So I'm probably on the screen. If you look, if the map was carried on where the Windows logo is, that's probably where I live. So it's not far away. But so I can hear the industrial estate that's this side of the bottom side of Crown Farm Way, and I have a lot of sympathy with residents. I'm lucky that work that's carried out on that side isn't 24/7. It's pretty much only daytime, so that you can hear it. You know, so you've got my complete sympathies if you have to live through that kind of noise 24/7. The problem I've got with this, I suppose, in coming to a decision, is what's put in front of us today. Is that going to make a material difference to the noise level that we've got at the moment? And I'm not convinced it is, really. And it pains me to say that, really, but it's just, you know, I can't see from what we've heard so far that it's going to make anything particularly worse than what we've got at the moment. So, like has already been said about by Councillor Stevenson, you know, if people have got issues with it, they need to, you know, record it. They need to send it into environmental health, and you know, if this company needs to be dealt with if they are operating outside of what the parameters are that they should be. But declining a planning permission today for something that's ancillary to the site is probably not going to resolve the situation like people expect it to. It is disappointing, can I say, that the applicant hasn't come tonight and hasn't spoken tonight. you know, so I will say that is in something that's clearly quite an emotive subject to local residents. It's really disappointing that the applicant hasn't bothered to come and speak tonight and be questioned by councillors. But on the whole, I'm not sure as I could vote against this proposal, because I don't think it's going to make the problem any worse. And to resolve the problems, it needs to be done by a different route.
Yeah, and Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
Kind of agree. Given to the fact ability given to hours and people going to it more and therefore more noise. Big presentation. And parapet and a lot of people heard by doing that, and I'm not ahead of it. I sat in somebody's garden today on like halfway down Lime Grove. See if I could find here on it. Here halfway down Lime Grove. Adding to it house is going to get worse. Every total horseman and
Any further comments? I'd make one. The main issue seems to be the cumulative noise effect. You've got a site that's in operation that's probably producing quite a lot of noise, and they're unrestricted in operation. This ancillary application, we have got the power to make conditions to restrict the hours that it operates. So I'd like Claire just to explain what options are available on that. Could, for example, make no Sunday trading, or have the Sunday trading hours restricted to the normal Sunday trading hours of 10 till 4. It's something that we can consider. I'll ask Claire just to give you the options that are available and how it would impact, but the overall problem has got to be resolved through environmental health.
Yeah, so Councillor Wetton is completely right there in terms of the committee could alter the wording of the working hours condition, for example, if they wanted to restrict Sundays and bank holidays, for example. Working, obviously the conditions, as we mentioned at planning training, have to meet the 6 tests, which we have to consider whether it's reasonable to do so on balance, that the Brickworks obviously has no restrictions, but does this cumulative impact that allow for restricted hours? I'd be happy to consider that. Or
just for protocol on voting, would committee seek to change conditions? Would it make it easier to vote? Do you want to vote on the main proposal and only amend conditions if it falls? Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
Looking at the conditions 4 and 5, I'm not sure that they can trade off funding in any case. I'd be wrong with that. Should be looking at changing the conditions slightly today.
Yeah, I agree. I think, well, my officer opinion would be to change the working day. Sundays. I think the delivery conditions quite original brickworks anyway. So that would be my recommendation, to restrict working on a bank holiday. So it would be
Condition 3.
condition 3.
To 30th.
I would just suggest that the batching plant hereby permitted shall operate between 7 and 5 Monday to Saturday, with no working on a Sunday, bank holidays.
Councillor Stevenson.
Just clarify whether this application itself needs to be declined as it stands in order to vary the condition. So do we decline it, then make an alternative proposal including the new condition, or can we vary this condition based upon the discussion we're having now?
Pauline, you can move amendment, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Councillor Stevenson, if you as the proposer and Councillor Coxhead as the seconder wish to have a vote on the recommendation with the amended condition 3 as Claire has just outlined, then that's absolutely fine.
Confirm then that you are proposing and Councillor Coxhead seconding with the amended condition 3 as outlined.
I'll consider my proposal with the amended condition to restrict Sunday working hours.
Do anybody want to make any further comment? No? Oh, Councillor Hartshorn.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to make the comment before we go any further that I'm still really concerned for the residents up there. It sounds like an horrendous area to live, and it sounds like the lack of evidence is a big part of this. So for environmental health to enforce any conditions, there needs to be, those residents need to come forward to supply that evidence before any action can be taken. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to comment? I'll move to the vote then, please, by show of hands. All those in favour of the proposal with the amended condition, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? you. So, planning application reference 2024-0679 full construction of a self-service batching plant with cement silo, auger pan, mixer, aggregate bins, discharge conveyor, control payment console, washout water, recycling bin and associated equipment incorporated within the plant, Mansfield Brick, Crown Farm Way, Forest Town, Mansfield, has been granted permission with conditions, particularly the amended condition 3, which restricts working hours. Thank you. Now move on to item 6, which is planning application reference 2021-0670, application for approval of reserve matters to access appearance, landscaping, layout and scale following the outline application 2016-0201 NT outline plan application, including the reserve matters of access for a residential development of up to 150 number dwellings, demolition and clearance of the existing redundant industrial buildings, reclamation and remediation, the improvement and upgrading of Oxclose Lane to an adoptable standard, Marshall's Mono Limited, Oxclose Lane, Mansfield Woodhouse, Notts. Could I invite the officer to make a report, please?
Thank you, Chair. So there's only one sort of minor update on this, and it's on the sort of the header of the report. It says that just ward counts. Ward is for some reason split. I don't know whether it's probably a technical error in either the generation or it was missed. It's listed as Yeoman Hill, so Councillor Coxhead was listed as a ward member. It's just in the Vale ward, so it was just Councillor Jane Beecher was the only ward members relevant, but that's the only sort of relevant update. So. So just to provide context, so to this applicant, so the outline planning permission for the development of up to 150 residential dwellings was granted on appeal on the 21st of November 2018. So that considered sort of that was all the outline issues that were considered, and the access issue on Oxclose Lane, not the sort of the mouth of where you enter the development itself, but the actual sort of the road that leads up to it. So that issue has that was one that the council refused, but it was allowed on appeal. So the proposal that we are just presenting before the committee tonight is for the reserve matters relating to the access to the mouth, the actual getting into the site itself, landscaping, layout, appearance and scale. The actual number of dwellings that is proposed under this scheme is 119, so it's about 80% of the total of the maximum figure, so that was allowed by the outline condition. So just to provide the broad location of the development, so it's located on the western side of Mansfield Woodhouse, and it's a former brownfield industrial site. It has a total area of just under 4 hectares, so exactly 3.8 hectares. There's no real sort of planning constraints here. The site's in flood zone 1, so there's no known drainage issues. So there's a railway that runs along. So the back of this image there, that runs along behind the tree bank. So the image you're looking at here is sort of looking west to east. It's just a 3D Google Earth image that kind of just gives you a sense to the site constraints. So it's bounded by woodland and tree banks on all sides, which are proposed to be retained as part of the development. So if I just go, I'm just going to go through. So there were a number of representations received, sort of, because this application's been in for a number of years now. So that it was originally, there was sort of, I think it was a bit of a drop before I started. So the objections really, so there was impacts on privacy, sort of brackets overlooking and requesting that the dwellings to the north are bungalows, concerns regarding drainage, which is not really a material consideration. It's a condition that's dealt with on the outline. Impact from contamination and dust, there are, again, controlled by conditions on the outline planning consent. Levels raised due to the presence of a concrete base, that's condition 12 on the outline planning consent. And then the time frame for the development to complete, again, that's the commencement of development. So is controlled by the effectively after the, I can't remember the exact wording of the condition, but after this is whether this is granted, they will have effectively an amount of time to commence. If they don't, they'd have to reapply for planning permission. The most recent, so they date back from 2021. So we ran an additional sort of round of public consultation just before this came to planning committee. So we only received as part of that a neutral. So it was changed to a neutral objection from someone who had previously objected. There were similar concerns relating to drainage finished floor levels, which I have referenced in the report, but again are controlled by outline planning conditions. There was also a comment received in support of the application and the request that a steel fence to the rear of the property was retained or maintained. There's no evidence to suggest that that will be removed as part of the development. So if I just go, so what I'll do is I'll just go through just briefly some of the background issues, so housing mix and affordable housing. So just to be clear on this, so that there's the policy requirement for affordable housing is only 5%. As opposed to 10% on it, because that's due to the value zone of the development and the brownfield nature of the site, which attracts a lower percentage in the local plan. There, I think it's the total figure, I believe, is six dwellings, so it would comply with that figure. And that's we've not got an exact list of which ones would be affordable, but that's controlled as a pre-commencement planning obligation on the S106. As far as the overall housing mix is related to, there's a figure 2 on page 8 of the officer report, kind of gives you an overall figure, but just to outline the assessment text of this, because policy page 3, this kind of sort of ties into the layout and the mix of housing. So we've got a scheme which is it's not perfectly compliant with the overall recommended housing mix, but we have what is effectively a scheme that's dominated by 2 and 3 bedroom dwellings, and there's also some flats on the site. So it's not just like a monolith of one type of house. There's about 8 different house types for 120 dwellings. So it was felt by officers that there is generally a good mix of houses on the site. There's only of that there's only 5 4-bedroom houses, or so the actual mix is sort of very aimed in sort of the mid-range of the affordability spectrum, not directly material, but it kind of ties into the layout slightly. So if we just to cover on the access to the site, this is kind of a quirk really, because it was largely addressed as part of the outline planning consent, but for some reason the inspector decided to include a condition that required access to be submitted even though it was already dealt with. So that has been considered very briefly, and that there's not any new issues raised there. The Highway Authority has considered the proposal from a highways perspective to be acceptable. There are a significant number of conditions relating to the internal layout of the site, but no further requests for the access to the from the mouth of the estate itself. So if I just sort of go into sort of each of the reserve matters, I'll start with layout. So I think throughout, the reason this scheme's taken so long to come to the committee isn't sort of that there wasn't like a substantial concern about the principle of the development itself. This scheme was subject to input from our urban designers, so there's been a significant effort by so I think there's been 3 or 4 amendments to the layout of the site to effectively try and improve the overall green space, street trees, walkability, to try and create something which is a bit more sort of favourable to live in, rather than just having sort of something that's just designed to meet technical highway specifications. So there is one large area of public open space, again relevant to landscaping as well, that will be maintained by a management company, which is standard. So 106 requirement, and it's a standard sort of standalone obligation on the 106, and there's also some other green spaces scattered throughout the site. The green space was considered to be acceptable. The layout has it's not from the urban designer, it wasn't a complete no objection, but there was an understanding in when I wrote the report for the planning balance that there's a need to balance the trying to create a layout that is walkable as possible with the technical highway specification. So acceptable parking, footways, access onto the site, technical vehicle turning heads, fire hydrants, all the stuff that is basically to make sure that the highway safety impact is acceptable. So we basically tried to secure the best balance we could achieve between the two, and we think we've achieved that. So you've effectively got a layout which has minimized the use of cul-de-sac, so it's not just some endless winding labyrinth. It's designed to allow permeability through the site to the maximum degree. It's quite close to a train station, so the overall walkability could be a lot worse. You've got effectively an outer ring of sort of terrace houses that goes around the outside, and then you've got sort of perimeter blocks and flats, sort of the patch of green, the top of that picture, that's where one of the block of flats is, and then there's other flats sort of to the southwest and partially to the southeast of the site. There is a plan showing building heights on the next, I think it's on one of the next, we've got a pastor, it's on one of the slides that's included in the presentation. So the layout was considered to be, broadly speaking, quite a walkable layout that attempted to minimise the use of cul-de-sacs, although, again, there was a balance to be struck, so we considered the layout to be acceptable. So moving on to scale. So the proposal effectively, so one of the representations received was about privacy. So the closest, there aren't actually any residential dwellings that close to the site. The closest is about 20 metres, and that's on the northern end. Those, we have given consideration to that comment about bungalows. So whilst they're not technically bungalows in a traditional sense, it's still 2 stories, but they're not even dormer bungalows. The second floor is effectively roof lights along that entire rear elevation of on the first floor of all of those dwellings. So the risk of unacceptable overlooking on those northern plots is effectively resolved by the design intervention. So effectively the roof lights will effectively make it impossible to look from higher floors unless someone sits a telescope in the roof light, which is, well, I won't say anymore. So the scale, broadly speaking, a lot amongst the rest of the site is 2-story dwellings, so of a typical scale. That includes the flats as well, so that we're not looking at something being wholly disproportionate in scale, even though the flats will obviously attract a higher density of development just by nature, but you're not having to deal with individual driveways and garden spaces. There are a number of 2.5-story and 3-story dwellings, but they're all concentrated to the south of the site. So there's not really any risk there of overlooking or overbearing development because they're sort of concentrated on their own. There's been an effort to sort of, again, cluster them along that southern boundary, so they're not going to be impacting the other occupiers in the way that would raise substantial concerns at officer level. So the overall scale was considered to be acceptable as well. As far as appearance goes, it's I guess there's not sort of any particular character areas. The general brick mix and roof cladding is broadly homogeneous across the site, but I think given the sort of spatial constraints of the development as a whole, which is effectively basically surrounded by woodland on all sides, the actual visual impact was essentially zero, and there was the original reasons for refusal didn't surround along the principle of housing development on the site, but access to the development as a whole. So figure 3 on the officer report, page 15, kind of goes through sort of all of the material spec, but there was no, it is homogeneous, but there was no broad concerns on appearance. Similar comments with landscaping, really. There has been there has been an effort to integrate more sort of, so street trees are recommended across the development, and there's a number of conditions to control their delivery, and there is also potential in future that doesn't rule out things like TPOs in the future, and there is an effort to, obviously that would be controlled, as the effort is most of these wouldn't be on the individual plot, so there's much less of a risk of people just coming along and chopping them down. So the actual boundary, sort of the hard boundary treatments, are the mixture of timber knee rails, timber fencing of 1.2 to 1.5 meters in height. There's limited use of 1.8 sort of timber fencing, sort of the traditional suburban nightmare, I guess most people would say. And there's also like a mixture of metal railings and garden boundary walls on the site as well. So both hard and soft landscaping was considered to be acceptable. Management of those is 106, is partially by condition, but mostly by the public open space, and the locally equipped neighbourhood playground is mostly controlled by the 106 as well, and future management.
I'll just interrupt you a second, Dan. we're approaching 8:30, and for us to remain, we've got to have a vote to extend committee. So all those in favour, please.
So
9 o'clock. Any against? No, that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, Dan, sorry to have interrupted you.
no, it's okay. I just hope I wasn't waffling too much. That's as far as the reserve matters for consideration. Primarily, we're looking at access to the site, which is probably the least of which mostly determined the outline, so appearance, landscaping, scale, and layout, all of which were on balance considered to be acceptable and didn't raise any objections at officer level. As far as the other issues are concerned, again, the development will incorporate, I think, solar panels throughout the scheme. There's generally speaking quite a tight urban grain, so there's an effort to that would, I guess, generate a lower level of materials to actually build the development, and it is close to a train station. So the actual sustainability, and this was assessed at the outline of the scheme, was actually quite favourable. So again, that's limited positive weight, if anything, in favour of the development. Flood risk is all controlled by the outline planning conditions and was viewed favourably. And I think as far as the general recommendation is that the scheme is in accordance with the relevant policies in the local plan and subject to the scheduled conditions, it's recommended for approval. Thanks.
For your report, Dan. Do members have any questions of the officer? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at the access. Just trying to get my head around how you get onto this, because the train line's there. Will the access be over it, or under it, or how does that work?
So, thank you, Councillor.
Explain to me.
It is a complex issue, and I think that obviously Claire was the original case officer on the original outline consent, and that this was a matter. So it goes underneath the railway bridge to actually, so it comes off. I'd have to look at the map to actually get the actual access road. So, yeah, it comes off. Yes, yeah. Is that okay? Sorry. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
So yeah, there's a significant number of conditions, but they relate to sort of the Section 38 process for the road adoption, as well as sort of the mitigations, I guess, being again dealt with at the outline planning consent. So I guess the answer to that question is yes, but obviously it's more of a matter for the Highway Authority. Again, as I say, the original officer recommendation outline wasn't to support the scheme, but I guess we're at a position now where we're looking at the access to the site and then the 4 reserve matters, which I've kind of presented in the report. So yes, there are a significant number of conditions on the scheme, and it is something that we've discussed with Highways, and it will be an ongoing issue. But I guess we've just tried to basically make the best of what we've got with the whole scheme. So I hope that answers your question.
Councillor Hartshorn.
Thank you. Would that refer to flood zone 1 that Councillor Tempest Mitchell's just referred to?
Thank you, Councillor. So when we assess flood risk, there's broadly speaking there's different categorizations of the flood zones themselves. So the whole site is in flood zone 1, but what Councillor Tempest Mitchell's referring to is so that under the railway bridge there's a very localized issue of surface water flooding. So that runs independently from the flood zones. But again, this is an issue that has been acknowledged by the Highway Authority, and it's something that we will look to mitigate to the best of our ability through the conditions and as just joint authorities on the development.
No one else wishing to? One's indicated. Thank you. Could I have a proposer and seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Tempest Mitchell, Councillor Stevenson. In debate mode, was anyone want to make comments? No one's indicated, so we'll move to the vote then by show of hands. All those in favour of granting permission, please show. Any abstentions? Any against? No, that's unanimous. Thank you. The appendices of Human Rights Act and use classes. The committee, please show of hands so you've noted these. It's unanimous, thank you. Then item 8, which is the appendices of Human Rights Act, use clauses, appendices 1 and 2. There a show of hands that these duly be noted. It's unanimous, thank you. Finally, item 9, which is planning appeals decisions. Inform everyone that there were no appeal decisions for this report. Well, there was one. Say that here. Can I have that noted as well then, please? Yeah. Yeah. Can I have a show of hands that the recommendation be noted? It was refused. Thank you. Thank you very much for your attendance. I wish you all a safe journey home. Thank you.